What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? It's your boy. God, it is so weird how much more nervous I am when I don't have like a planned thing in front of me. What's up? What's up, everybody? It's your boy, aka Reed from Shameless Nerd. Welcome to the third episode of the Shameless Nerd Show. This is the show that I do every time the channel hits a milestone, where I do three things. I start with some random rant, ramble sort of thing about something, and then I take some questions from the Shameless Nerd Discord, and then I read a chapter or two of the novel that I'm working on. And my purpose for doing this is twofold. One, I want to do something for the people who I get a lot of comments that are like, "Oh, this reminds me of like old YouTube," or like when when the internet was alive, when like people were actually being creative and like doing things, and that is the most like meaningful comment that I get. And so I want to do something that kind of emphasizes that, which is like this almost like a very low budget podcast kind of deal. I don't know. It is a little bit less edited. It's a little more like anti-algorithm, right? Like doing three different things in a video that's long form, that isn't like, super like niche topic or whatever. Now I can't even remember which way I say niche. I think I've been saying niche, and everybody was mad at me. And then I made such a big deal out about pointing out that you can say it both ways that now I don't remember how I say it. Which I think the way that I was saying it that bothered everybody was niche, and everybody was saying that you're supposed to say niche, but that was actually an adopted pronunciation, because after hundreds of years of people saying niche, people realized that it came from French origin, and then they tried to prescribe this French pronunciation onto it and say, oh, it's niche, and now both are accepted. What the hell am I talking about? The main thing is the main reason I'm doing these kinds of videos is because, one, they're fun. They're it's creatively stimulating for me. I like interacting with the little community that we have, and two, I want to do something that is for the people who are actual, I don't know, it feels disingenuous, or it feels kind of icky to say fans, because I don't feel like I've warranted having fans. I feel like that's kind of gross to say, but for lack of a better word, people who are real fans of the channel and of kind of the ethos of what I represent, or what I hope to kind of make sure that it's very obvious that I stand for, which is DIY, being creative, being weird, being unashamed about being super into your interests, and being kind of anti-algorithmic conformity. So yeah, that's a very long-winded way of saying thank you guys for watching my dumb ass do the stupid shit that I do on this channel. I have now, my next video is sponsored again by this company who gave me a chair that this super nice office chair that I get to sit in. My point is to say that this is my dreams coming true is so far beyond an understatement. This is, I've dreamed about this kind of thing since I was 11 or 12 years old. And so I am just eternally grateful, and I want to make very clear throughout this whole process, no matter where this goes. It's been 8 months of making videos for the channel. No matter where it ends up going, and as long as I get to do it, I just want to make very clear that I will always do what I intended to do when I made the channel, and I will never take for granted the fact that you people are watching me on your phone right now, because it's working. I want to be, if I can have one kind of self-indulgent goal for the channel, or it all sounds so self-sucking, but if I can allow myself one very self-indulgent symbolic thing, I want it to be that I am a proof that it can still be done this way, even if it stopped right now, if it stopped at 20,000 and I could put out a video and 2,000 people, 3,000 people would watch it, that I think should be irrevocable, unequivocal evidence that you don't have to be Mr. Beast, right? You don't have to be the Hawk Tuah girl to be on the internet and to have to use the internet for its original purpose, which is sharing. That there is still a place for this sort of thing in this wider context of this hellhole capitalist oppressive bullshit internet that we now all live on. So I want to talk about a couple things. And then I want to take some questions. I'm so excited for these questions. I try to not read the questions, but I read a couple of them. And you guys are so fun. Like, y'all are just so cool. I'm so lucky, in addition to everything else, to have so many cool, thoughtful people that I get to interact with just, like, whenever I want to. That I can just, like, drop into the damn Discord and just, like, oh, there's 15 people that, like, I know that I would be close friends with in real life if I got the opportunity to. And I can just talk to them for a minute. And, like it's so wild. Again, what the hell am I talking about? And that is this. So I have been kind of toying with this thought lately that I think that I might try to, like, flesh out into, like, a video or something. So I teach 7th grade. So my students are, like, 12, 13 years old. And I'm 29. This is my first year teaching where there has been something cultural or, like, generationally cultural that makes me feel old insofar as I cannot comprehend it. I've always prided myself on, like, being very young and being a young teacher, being, like, relatable. I don't, like, my classroom management style is never, like, I've never yelled at a student. I've never, like, tried to scare them because look at me. Like, I'm not going to scare a kid into doing what he's supposed to do. I've never tried to, you know what I mean? Like, I do everything through, like, building real relationships with my kids, talking to them, like, validating their experience, treating them like people and not numbers or, like, standardized test scores, and relating to them and being not friends with them, but being friendly with them. And I still can do that without issue. But this year, there has been one specific thing that is happening that I can't comprehend for the first time ever in my career that makes me feel very old and very out of touch and a little bit worried. And I will tell you why I'm worried, because I'm generally very optimistic about, like, the youth and, like, young people or whatever. But so some of you, I'm sure, are on TikTok. If you are, get the hell off TikTok because it's rotting your brain. I mean, I say that in jest. If you're on TikTok and you like TikTok, stay on TikTok, okay? I have my thoughts. I'm not judging anybody for being on TikTok. If you are on TikTok, you probably will have seen the 6'7" meme. And it's, so students will do this. 6'7". 6'7", like, incessantly. Like, they'll do it, like, involuntarily. Like in class, like a kid will, like, raise his hand. Can I go to the bathroom? And I'll be like, yeah, like, 6'7". Like it's like a tick. Like it's like it is like an involuntary, like a Tourette's-esque kind of tick. And it is the strangest thing in the world, because obviously when I was a kid, we had, like, in-group jokes, right? We had, like, memes and things that only the kids knew, right? And like, I, remember as a kid, I would, playing video games, my dad would be like, I don't understand why you like that video game, or I don't understand, I can't wrap my head around what this is, what is Pokemon, or whatever. And, or, I would watch the dumbest things in the whole history of the world, and I would laugh at them, like End of the World on funnyjunk.com, or like the Pokemon in Real Life video by Smosh, or like Niga Higa videos, or like Shit Asian Parents Say, if you've never seen that video. That one actually still kind of holds up. I think that one's funny. Or like Charlie the Unicorn, like stupid, mindless bullshit, and like just vapid viscera, and I would laugh, and it would be funny to me, and it wouldn't be funny to, like, an older generation, and I recognize that. However, trying to be as objective as possible, trying to be as not rose-colored glass biased as possible, the 6'7" thing I think is unique and is new. Okay, I like absurdist, kind of like Dadaist, like dumbass memes and shit. Like, I like when, like the like a deep fried picture of like, I can't remember his name, the big dude in the black shirt, and it's like deep fried and like distorted, and it says like, tell Squidward DiGiorno bottom text or whatever. Like, I like that, but that, I think, is taking a thing and flipping it in a way that there is still a message in some weird abstract way. There is still, like, an essence to it that is funny. I think it's like, it's like defying expectation. It's like taking something that you expect to be one way and not doing it. And that is, even though it's absurdist and it's stupid and it's mindless, it is still, like, comedy. It's like in the world of comedy. It's like absurdist, stupid, low-tier comedy shit. But 6'7", it doesn't reference anything funny. There's no root to it that is funny. And I've interviewed my students, essentially, trying to get them to explain to me where it came from, the history of this meme, why it's funny. And so I've learned a lot about it. And It's not funny, and it was never funny any step of the way until now. But it like persisted. It's been like, a year. Like one of my favorite artists, Kamo, came out with a song that references the 6'7" meme like 8 months ago, which means it was written like probably a year ago. And it's been around forever. It's existed and persisted through months and months despite never being funny. And it's still, when I ask my students, why is that funny? They say it's funny because it's not funny. And that I also kind of get when something is anti-humor, when it's funny because you're expecting it to be funny and then it's not. But when that thing is distilled down and isolated and then said in a vacuum, said by itself, I don't get why that's funny. I don't understand it. Because 6'7" came from, so the original reference point is that LaMelo Ball, a basketball player, who I do like, he's a very creative, fun basketball player. He's very like Gen Z, he's like one of the first like true Gen Z athletes in the NBA. He is 6'7". And so there was some interview where they were like, how tall are you? And he was like, 6'7". And the interview was like, okay, great. And that wasn't funny. It wasn't like, that didn't like go viral for being funny or something. He didn't like do anything weird. He just like did this gesture and said 6'7". And then that like, but the interview was big because it's LaMelo Ball and he's very popular. And then it was referenced in a song where like, because that interview was popular and the 6'7" thing kind of was recognizable. There was like a 6'7" song that some rapper made, and then like people would make YouTube videos to the song, so then like 6'7" became like a thing by itself. And then because the song got bigger than the original interview, or like the reference, then 6'7" got then extracted from the song, and then people would just say like 6'7" in like reference to the song. But like, why is that funny? Like it's not funny in the song. Like what is funny about the reference? Like just a reference, a one-sided, a one-leveled reference to something. If it's a double entendre, like there is one aspect of it that I think is now funny because it has existed, which I'll talk about in a second. But just referencing something in abstract, like by itself, that isn't funny, I don't think is funny. I don't think it's not like I don't think it's funny. I don't think it is funny. Like, I don't think that there is something funny there to be laughed at. I don't think it is a thing. I don't think it is anything, which maybe that's why it's funny. Maybe that's why kids like it, is because it's like a nothing. It is like a way to like make tangible the essence of like a whisper of a joke and then like pull it out. And like we've just gotten so far from like the original purpose of things that like now that by itself is what's funny about it. But now, like, what is, I think, funny is that now, because 6'7" has become so big, the kids will just walk around saying 6'7". And again, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, it is as stupid as it sounds. It is just kids walking around going 6'7", 6'7". And then now it's gotten, like, a step further, and now they're laughing at other numbers. And, like, I overheard a group of kids the other day say, oh, bro, you're not going to believe this, bro. Dead ass. My mom said 41 last night. And they were all laughing. They were like, I can't believe she said 41. I'm like, what are you talking about? She just said 40, and like now they're laughing at 23. They're laughing at 41. I feel like I'm losing my mind. If you know more about this, if you're younger, most of my viewers are like around my age, which is great, I think. Even though, like, I do think a lot of what I say would probably be valuable to someone open-minded from a younger generation. I do have some younger viewers that I know of that are younger. But if you are younger and you know and you can explain this to me in a way, like maybe I'm just like more off base than I think, I would really, genuinely, I would appreciate it if you would like write a thesis and comment it and send it to me or something. The 6'7" thing is driving me crazy. But where I was going with this, the idea that I'm toying with is that I think that there is, like, monoculture has long been dead, like that, like up until maybe like early 2000s, a little bit past that, maybe like 2010s, early 2020s. People would all see the same thing and hear the same song and like watch the same movie or whatever, and that has like become, or that was for a long time a very important like cultural thing, that everybody had the same reference points for the same movies, the same music, the same TV, and all that stuff. And, you know, things like Friends, things like Seinfeld, things like E.T. or Back to the Future, or like these movies and these TV shows that were like so ubiquitous that they got distilled into everything, almost like the King Arthur myth became everything else. That, I think, was very interesting, that everybody kind of shared a culture. And everybody had their own personality, their own take on that thing, whatever it was. But now it's kind of the inverse, that like now there is no monoculture because everything is so small and so specific and so algorithmically curated to be exactly what you want to see, and there is so much of everything that we can consume. Now that like monoculture is kind of dead, right? That everybody can listen to whatever music that they want to and play whatever video game they want to, and it will likely be different than the person next door. And I think that's kind of sad. I think that is oddly something to lament, even though I do also love that there is so much out there that is specific to, and there are communities that are built to, like, you know, as support for people with specific interests. And they're like, we live in a world that does, I think, facilitate a more specific interest. But I think the sad part of that, the flip side, is that like 6, 7, like instead of a monoculture, we as humans are so tribal. We're we're such social primates that we are still driven to points of reference. And the fact that it is so hard to find points of reference now that are media-based, they are now meme-based, they are now personality-based. Like, because especially with the younger generation that's on TikTok and whatever else, Instagram Reels, like, goes without saying, YouTube Shorts, all that stuff, because that stuff is so personality-based, and now people are platformed just for being themselves, being a version of them, a very marketable version of themselves. Everybody is like kids are sharing the same personality. They're all like, there's like a mono personality, and they're all sharing the same like manner of speech, the same like ideas. This like it is all because it's all delivered more plainly. It's all delivered more personality based instead of like media based and like plot based, and it's not based in literature. It's based in like just a person on social media, like, yo, what's this? Get ready with me. Look at me put on my makeup, and they tell a story about their day or whatever. That I like my students are all way more similar to each other than I feel like I was with the people at my school in the same area 15 years ago, which is, I guess, longer than I feel like it is, but is still not that long ago, right? I mean, I was not that similar to the people around me as I feel like my students are now. And like a couple of my teacher friends were joking at the lunchroom that it is really cool in a sense that if you look into the cafeteria at our school, it's impossible to tell who the cool kids are and who like the jocks are and who the emo kids are and whatever. And that's a nice thing in a sense, but I think it's also kind of sad. I think it's also like individualism is so fun, and it is so, and like finding your small close-knit community is so fun. And I think that part of like the mass anxiety epidemic and like depression epidemic is also rooted in like that giant shared identity and that giant personality that everybody is borrowing from at a young age. Whereas like I found my little group of emo weirdos when I was in middle school, and I couldn't skate or whatever, but like I thought Matt was cool because he had long hair and like he wore red skinny jeans. And so like I borrowed from his personality, I borrowed from my friends' personalities, and we like developed each other's personality, and that's like why we remain friends. And I feel like it is isolating. If nobody is different from each other, then there is no community, there is no connection. And I feel like that is like a thing that is missing, maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of working through this as I go. That's it for this segment of the video, and we're going to move on to the questions. Maeri, one of my favorite people from the Discord, asks me a few questions. If you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go? This is an interesting question. I have struggled for a long time with like travel anxiety. I get very afraid that like if I'm somewhere I'm not familiar with, that I'm going to have a panic attack, and that's going to like, and then that like makes me anxious, and I have this like referential anxiety loop that is like so frustrating and stupid. I would love to travel. I'm working on it about like actually like realistically traveling, because I do want to travel, but I'm struggling right now with that. If I could travel anywhere in the world, for me first it would be It's a little bit of a cliche answer, but it's Rome. I don't know. The history is cool. It's like the modern society, that still is there, and like seeing the Colosseum, I think would be cool. I'm also Italian, so like seeing Italy, like I want to go to like Naples and Venice and whatever. It's kind of a boring answer. It would be Italy for me. It would be Rome first, and then the rest of Italy. All right, sorry, I had to go fill up my giant water bottle. Mary asks, what is your favorite tree and flower and or herb? My favorite tree is just like a giant oak tree. I think the biggest tree in the world is like the angel oak tree or whatever in South Carolina maybe. But like just those like big, fat, ancient oak trees with like a million different little trees coming off of them, I think are my favorite. My favorite flower is something blue. I like that, like the only blue thing in nature that is naturally occurring is like a flower. I think is really cool. So like a hydrangea flower maybe, like the little flowers on a hydrangea, which I guess would just be a hydrangea. I don't know. And my favorite herb is basil. The smell of basil, the smell of fresh basil is like it is the most perfect smell that exists. I would wear basil as a cologne. Mary's final question is thoughts on the eternal soul. Wow, what a left turn from the last couple questions. That's awesome. On the eternal soul, I don't know. I'm infatuated like with the idea of your essence or your spirit or whatever that is like living on, and like as to whether or not I can like wrap my head around it or like believe it, I don't know. But I am so, like, stricken with existential dread and, like, obsession over my, like, mortality. And I just think about it constantly. I, like, can't get it out of my head in a way that's, like, actually, like, pretty pathological and, like, kind of a problem. I love the idea. I don't know what I think, like, spiritually. I don't know what I, like, believe in. The only thing so I'm, like, pretty simple and I'm pretty, like, dumb. And so, to me, there is, like, one thing that I can't unbelieve, and that is, like, based on what I understand, and I could just be way wrong, but based on what I understand to be one of the very few laws of physics, being matter cannot be created, matter or energy cannot be created nor destroyed, the fact that things exist would then necessitate something not bound by those laws existing. So there has to, at minimum, be some sort of, like, magic inherent in, like, the science of the universe. Like, that they're like, at the genesis of everything, there has to have been something outside of the laws of thermodynamics or whatever that's not bound to the same rules as, like, the universe that we know. And I don't know what that is. I don't claim to know what that would be or look like or whatever, but I can't help but believe that. And that's kind of the only thing that I haven't successfully been able to, like, unconvince myself of. And but like that alone is not very comforting, and it's not enough. Like I would love the idea. I would love to, like, fully internalize the idea of something bigger, something greater, and like some after life or something, something like that, something like, like a Hindu kind of belief or like a Buddhist understanding of, like, the circles and of reincarnation or whatever. But I just don't know. Maybe I'll get to that point, but as of right now, I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's a cool idea. Moving on. Lenora asks, what is your favorite episode of The Owl House so far? So I'm watching Owl House at Lenora's recommendation. She's like a big fan of it. And it's awesome. It is so wonderful. And my son and I are watching it, and we're like maybe halfway through, or maybe 3/4 of the way through season 2. I think my favorite episode is the episode where Ida, like, comes to term, like, confronts the owl beast, and, like, then, like, she gets the 2 different colored eyes because she's, like, re-internalized it or, like, absorbed it or whatever. I think is really cool. And that's probably my favorite, like, turning point in the show. I don't know. I can't remember the details of, like, that full episode, but that's probably my favorite part of the show so far. My favorite, like, choice in the show is Ida losing her power and then not, and it might change. Like, I mean, I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but not getting it back, I think is really cool for, like, like a kids show. Like, I mean, I understand that, like, it's, you know, like Steven Universe or Regular Show or Adventure Time or whatever. Like, it is a show that's not intended for like solely children, but like is a show that was like on Disney Channel. You know what I mean? I love the idea of the stakes being real. Like, sort of like how in Game of Thrones, any character can die, and characters, like main characters, central characters that, like, spoiler alert if you've somehow never seen Game of Thrones, like, characters that were made, that, like, you were, as the audience, were made to believe would probably be, like, the central character, like Robb Stark dying in the Red Wedding, I think makes the rest of the series work, apart from the last season, because it feels plausible. There are real stakes in a way that I think most other shows can't quite establish. Like in Sopranos, for example, which is another like of those, when people say like, what's the greatest show of all time? People say like The Wire, Sopranos, Game of Thrones, like these shows. I think The Sopranos suffers from like the whole first season and a half of The Sopranos is like, oh, there's a plot to kill Tony Soprano. And it's like, I really struggled to, even though I did like The Sopranos, I struggled to like really buy in all the way to like the universe of it, because I knew unequivocally that Tony Soprano's not going to die. So it's like, it kind of felt like a waste of time that we spent this long plot on like, is Tony Soprano going to die? Because like the answer is no. And similarly, on a smaller scale, I think that Owl House, like that show, making the decision for like one of the central characters who is very proud of like her wild magic and like her power, to have that taken from her and not give it back is a super cool idea that really makes the rest of the show feel different from shows like that, that are like targeted at a younger audience. And I just think that's really cool, because then also like the show is availed to like all of these other avenues and like these really cool messages, like Ida learning that like her value isn't in her magic and her power and whatever. So I think that's really cool. All right, moving on. Do you have advice for soon-to-be college students? Absolutely. My number one piece of advice is to not do a morning class. Like, not even morning at all. Not even like 11 a.m. Like, if it's possible for you, make your classes like 1 to 4 p.m. every day. And don't load up. Like, I'm going to do all my classes on Thursday, so I have the rest of the week off or whatever. Because then, like, if you miss one class on Thursday, then you're, like, totally screwed. I would try to, like, be very deliberate about my scheduling and be honest with myself. Like, you might be, like, just a supreme morning person. I would argue that even if you are, college is about experiencing, about staying up late with your friends, about, like, having fun and still being able to learn, like, and do the actual college stuff. And being able to learn like yourself and about who you are, and the best way to do those things all at once is to stay up all night, sleep all day, go to class from like 1 to 4 every day, and you have like a set routine that is constant, and you don't have to worry about the late night out on a Monday, because like that's the last time in your life, realistically, for most people, that like you'll get to like have a group of your peers that is just like constantly available to you, and you guys can all stay up until 3 a.m. and like chat, you know, or whatever, or do much worse. And I think doing much worse is important. I think that's like vital to like becoming a functional human, is like learning how to navigate being a delinquent and still being responsible, and like finding that balance. And so that would be my main advice. I would also suggest, if possible, take your hard classes over the summer at home at the community college. I would have failed chemistry my freshman year, in addition to a bunch of other things like I just talked about in that last video. But I would have failed chemistry my freshman year, so I dropped it and then took it over the summer. And I tried as hard as I could in chemistry. I was like, this is my weak point. I'm going to focus all my energy in chemistry, and I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. Doing science math is the most miserable thing to me. So I went home and took it at the community college at home, and I made an A. I had like a 95. And so then I was able to, in addition to like the other things, like if you watched my last video, like I took a bunch of classes over the summer because I had to maintain my scholarship. And then when I went back, I was able to do two things that I think are really important. One, I avoided having to take all of my annoying like prerequisites, the really hard ones, in like, you know, your first couple years, your general studies years. And B, I was able, I think I said 1 and then B. So A and then B, I was able to take the minimum course load per semester for the rest of my like college like career and still graduate on time, which is also something that I think is a super great thing if you're able to do it, which is take a bunch of classes at home at the community college and get ahead, and then as many times as possible take the minimum course load, like 12 hours or whatever, because like it's hard. College is hard. And so planning for that, like being realistic in like you're not going to get up at 7 a.m. and take biology or whatever, like get calculus at 8 a.m. when you're 19 and you're hungover is not reasonable. And I think that like we have these, I did, and a lot of my friends had these like grand views of ourselves that we were like evolved, that we were going to be able to manage all these things at once, and didn't or couldn't, and most of them dropped out, and I like barely survived. So that would be my main advice. Oh, and in addition to that, have fun and like explore and like do crazy stuff. Number 3, what is something that your community has taught you, small or significant? I'm gonna interpret this as like my like growing up where I grew up. I don't know if this is talking about like the YouTube community, which is, I could answer that separately, maybe like, or maybe I'll do that question in the next one from that perspective. But if I'm interpreting this as like my community, like IRL, like the world that I grew up in the Southeast. And I think that the most important thing that I have learned growing up in the like kind of repressive, backward, bigoted kind of South is that it's not that entirely. Like that people are so complicated and complex and cognitively dissonant and hypocritical by nature that growing up in the South is a really good lesson in that. Like you can be it's so much easier to be hateful in abstract. It's so much easier to be like dismissive of struggle when that person is not in front of you, and you know, afraid of differences when that person is on TV in theory. And then when people are in front of you, people tend to be nice and kind and empathetic. And like I'll, you know, be in Walmart with, you know, my nails painted, or like when I used to have my nose pierced, and I would like, and like I get that, you know, this is still, it's not that crazy, right? Like it's not, and it's, you know, it's 2025. It's a little bit just kind of baseline more accepted of differences. But, and I get that, like, you know, I present male and I'm like a white guy, you know, so like there is still a bit of like common ground that I think is pretty privileged for me to pretend like is not there. But even so, when I walk up to like somebody in Walmart that is like 70 years old and they're like, you know, this like rednecks, and they're like in the little riding cart, and I walk up to them and I say hi, and I like strike up a conversation with them, which I will do because I'm a weirdo. They'll talk to me and they'll like have a friendly conversation with me. Like that, I think is like something that like I had to learn and then like relearn when I went off like to college, and like when I like started being in the real world and I like learned about stuff. And then I had these views of like the place that I grew up as like this horrible, evil place, which it is in some ways. Basically, I'm all over the place. My point is that person to person, I pretty adamantly, pretty wholeheartedly believe that people are good and people are kind, and people, and like we have an obligation as people who want to navigate the world with like love and empathy and wish that things operated that way. We have an obligation to like move through the world with that. Like that you have to engage with people who you are assuming in the same way that they're assuming about you, that you're assuming are not like-minded, because they're not, and you can still be loving, you can still be like friendly, in a way that I think is the only potential for actually changing somebody's mind about something. Like if you know, I don't know, this is such a like tricky thing that I've kind of backed myself into, and hopefully like it's not coming off in like the wrong way, but I don't know. I think that growing up in the South, my community, like the world that I've been kind of subject to living in, has taught me that like people are very complicated, and that nobody is irredeemable. Nobody is like entirely dismissible based on what I assume them to be. And further, that the South is not monolithic. Like the people that I associate with, my friends, and which is a big group of friends I'm so blessed, lucky to have, are like the kindest, sweetest, softest, like most thoughtful people on the planet. And they all grew up here. Like to people, I get offended and I get upset sometimes when I hear people that I'm like engaging with online that like apologize that I live in the South. Like they're, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, oh, that must be horrible. Like it's like I don't need that from you. Like to view the South as monolithic as this like indistinguishable. Like I am from here. Like I grew up here. So like when people say that kind of thing to me, or they're like, oh, ew, oh, the South, oh, they're all like rednecks, oh, blah blah blah. Like that's where those people live, but it's not every person anywhere. You know what I mean? Like they're like the most backward, evil, racist piece of garbage lives in North Dakota, you know, or what? Like everybody is everywhere, especially in like the modern day, like the internet age. Everybody is everywhere. All right. Last question from Lenora is, what program do you use to edit your videos? My computer seemingly can't handle my editing software, LMAO. I use iMovie for everything. All my videos have been edited in iMovie, and you can do anything with iMovie. I think it is the single greatest piece of like tie-in software, like free packaged with your purchase of something that has ever existed. It is like it is so capable, and you can do so many things with it. So yeah, that would be what I use. I did torrent Final Cut Pro, which is like the dad version of like the son, which is iMovie, and I'm using it for some like music videos and stuff because I wanted to have more like color grading options, because I'm working on like an album video, like a movie for like my like first like real album that I'm gonna put out hopefully soon, and it's really cool, and Final Cut is like pretty intuitive for something that's like as capable as it is, but I'll always be an iMovie girly. So yeah, iMovie rules. All right, moving on. Thank you, Lenora. Sunshine Sparrow asks, do you play D&D? If not, are you interested in it? If yes, what's your main or favorite class or race? I sort of have played D&D. I'm very interested in it. I watch a lot of like Dimension 20 on Dropout, and a couple of my buddies were in a D&D campaign, which is on YouTube. It's called Wayward 7, and they do a pretty good job also. I watched a lot of that. I like consume a lot of like D&D and D&D adjacent like material, but I've never really played in a campaign. I've never like just been lucky enough to like have the opportunity, and I really want to, but I haven't. The only thing that I did do is I DM'd a dumbed down version of a D&D campaign for my advanced students last year when we read Hunger Games, and like I taught them kind of how D&D works, and like I gave them character sheets, and they kind of built a little character out, and then we played a like Hunger Games themed campaign over like a couple weeks, like every other day in class, and it was so much fun, and it was so cool. But that's the closest I've ever been to like actually playing it, even though I've watched a lot of it. All right, Sunshine Sparrow asks, what do you think about Dia de los Muertos? Interesting. I like it. I think it's cool. I don't know if this question is asking like, do I believe in the validity of it or something. Like I think it's probably just say like, you know, what do you think, like kind of topical. I think the idea is very sweet and very beautiful, that like you live on in the memory of your family and generations that follow you, and I think that's really sweet and is a beautiful sentiment. And then like aesthetically, I think it's like the coolest thing in the world. Like the look of it, the vibe of it. I don't know. And then like the community, the togetherness of it, the like communication inherent in that sort of event taking place in a town or whatever is really cool. I think it's awesome, and I hope that that's what happens when we die. I hope that like the movie Coco is exactly how like reality is when we die. That would be best case scenario for me. Next question: if you had to choose, would you eat underripe or overripe bananas? So this might be a little controversial or divisive. To me, I would rather eat an overripe banana by so far. Like I would rather eat like a lime green, like iridescent banana than a like even slightly overripe banana. I like, it grosses me out with like when it gets mushy. It's disgusting. It like that. Ugh. I can't stand it. And I like to have to like chew it. Like, what a yucky kind of visual that I've painted here. But yeah, underripe by far. Number 4, if you got, I kind of mentioned this earlier. If you got a facial piercing, which would you choose? I think you'd look good with a septum. Oh, thank you. I would get my nose pierced again. I had my nose pierced all through like college and then into my first like real job, which they actually hired me with my nose piercing. I worked at a law firm for a couple years before I started teaching as like a paralegal or like a legal assistant, and they hired me with my nose pierced, And then like 2 weeks into working there, they were like, oh yeah, you got to get rid of the nose piercing. I was like, what the hell? I don't know about a septum is kind of scary to me. Like septum reads like very like bad bitch energy to me, like very like cool girl. And I don't have that vibe, I don't think. So but that's just like my interpretation of what that looks like. So I don't know, but I would definitely get my nose pierced again. I actually want to. I'll probably do that like this, like just do it over the summer or something when I can kind of get away with it. Which is annoying that I have to get away with it and that I can't just do it because it's so arbitrary that that's like not allowed. But whatever. Thank you, Sunshine Sparrow. Mollie, one of my favorite people in the Discord, asks, if you were to pick, what is your what is your favorite Pokemon mainline series? What is your go-to Pokemon team or Pokemon you always have to have in your Hall of Fame team? Thank you for asking a Pokemon question. My favorite Pokemon mainline, I'm going to interpret this as like mainline game. I don't know if this means like series like show. The only show that I ever watched in full is the Indigo League, like the very first series, and then Ultra Sun and Moon, I think, the Alolan like ones, which I watched with my son. So it would be Indigo League for me, but I'm like a Gen 1er. I can't help it. If I'm thinking this of it as games, my favorite series of games, or like my favorite generation, is the Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, the Gen 3, the Hoenn games. I think are it's like the most like reasonably challenging, the most like fully realized, the most like charming aesthetically, I think they're the highest number of compelling Pokemon in those games, and those are my favorite. So like Emerald is my favorite Pokemon game of all time, and then probably Crystal, and then probably Fire Red, Leaf Green, and then probably, honestly, I don't even know if I want to say this. I loved Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl on the Switch, which is like the most pissed on like release in the whole series, I think. I loved it. My favorite, my go-to Pokemon team is so like if I'm just gonna do this through the lens of like Emerald, is almost always there are like 4 like kind of typical annoying Pokemon, and there are 2 very weird ones, which is I somehow always end up with Marshtomp and Gyarados, and I just do 2 water types, and then like get flying and ground. And then I will do like Shiftry, so I get like a grass type, dark and grass. And then honestly, like if I get the Pikachu without too much trouble in like the forest in the beginning, I'll have like a Raichu, or I will often have like some kind of psychic type. Honestly, usually Kadabra. And then my last 2 are ones that are pretty hated, which are, well, actually, one of them I know is hated. One of them I think like people are kind of neutral on for the most part, which is Slugma, or into like Magcargo. And I just love him. I think he's such a cute little guy. I liked having a fire type on the team, I think is important. And I will often get Slugma and give him Sunny Day, and then I will have Rain Dance on either Gyarados or Marshtomp, because I will then always complete my team with Cast Form, which is just like one of the most hated Pokemon in all of Pokemon. But I love him. I think the gimmick is so cool. I think he's so fun. I think he's so cute. I love being able to like change his form. And like I know that it's not super useful. I know that it's not super reasonable to like waste a turn setting up Rain Dance so that he can be water type and still be a kind of shitty water type with a very limited move pool, because you have to have like the different types of moves to match. But I just love him. I don't care. That's the beautiful thing about Pokemon, is that you don't have to have Rayquaza, Gyarados, Dragonite on your team to win, right? And that's what I think is fun about it. Because I'm definitely drawn toward like the little cute ones. Togepi, Mew is my favorite Pokemon of all time. Sometimes I won't let my Wartortle evolve into Blastoise just because I like Wartortle way more. Like that kind of stuff. And so I love that I'm allowed to win without adopting the meta. That's something that like has kind of made me disillusioned with like modern video games, is like everything is so hyper competitive and so optimized now that like if you don't A, devote your whole life to the damn video game, and B, adopt whatever the dominant strategy is, then you really can't be like viably competitive. And so that's something that I love about Pokemon. Even competitive Pokemon, that there's so much optionality and so much like modular nature to Pokemon and like team building and stuff that I think makes it very fun. And then Pokemon you always have to have in your Hall of Fame team. So I kind of answered that with that. But a couple fun things that I've done is I beat Fire Red Leaf Green one time with a Beedrill only. He was like a level 96 Beedrill by the end of the game. I beat it with Beedrill only. I've beat Emerald with an all-normal team. Or no, Fire Red with an all-normal team, which relied heavily on Togepi getting lucky with Metronome. Because there were certain points where I had no move that could, like Agatha in the Elite Four and like the Ghost type Pokemon, I had like no moves that could hit. Yeah, that was a fun run. And then I've beaten it with an all grass team. On Emerald, I think I beat the Elite Four with an all grass team, which was fun. There's not actually that many like grass type Pokemon in the grand scheme compared to like water type Pokemon in Emerald. So, thank you, Mollie, for some Pokemon questions. Malachi asks, how many instruments can you play and what's your favorite? Malachi, also, if you get the chance, Malachi, I'm linking to anything that any of these people like want, just because they're all creative and talented and cool. Anything they want me to link to them is in the description. So Malachi makes some very like cool, interesting music if you get the chance to check it out. How many instruments can I play? I can play guitar and bass guitar. Those are the ones that I like really play. I can play piano not as well, and then I can play ukulele a little bit and play drums a little bit. In addition to I consider like sampling and like programming stuff also to be like an instrument of its own. Like working within your DAW, I think is like kind of playing an instrument. So like if you count that, I then like 6, 7, I guess. But guitar and particularly bass guitar are like the instruments that I play. The only ones that I feel comfortable like saying, if somebody asks me, do you play an instrument? I will say, yeah, I play bass. I think bass is really cool. Bass is my favorite. If I'm going to answer what's my favorite, bass is very cool because like it's a pretty cliche thing. If you're a music person, you've probably heard this before, but bass is what I think is the real driver of like the bounce of songs, and like what the tone of a song I think is very dependent on what the bass part is doing. Like you could have a very straight 4/4 like drum pattern, which like most people say like the drums are like the heartbeat of the song, which they are. But if you syncopate the bass and play like ghost notes in between the beats of the drum, then like it's gonna feel very different than if you play like a pop punk like do 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 like straight bass line. You can completely color the song differently if you're depending on how you're playing bass. And so I think that that's really fun as a songwriter to be able to experiment with like what the bass is doing and kind of feel how that's changing things. So bass. Egg, another of my favorite people in the Discord. Very, very, very nice person seemingly and very cool. Hope you're doing good reading. Thank you very much. I have a few questions. What is the nice. What is the most unusual microwave recipe you've come across and would you try it? So that's in reference to, if you haven't seen it, my most recent video, or not my most recent video, the 2 videos back, about this is not I can't remember what I called it. This is not progress or whatever. And I talk about this microwave book that I have of like this old book of microwave recipes. I think I referenced it in the video, but to me, the most insane thing in there, the most unhinged thing in that book is all of the seafood stuff. Like I can't imagine, particularly like lobster. I can't imagine buying lobster, as expensive as it is and as like highfalutin as it is, and then coming home and being like, oh, we're gonna prep this to cook in the microwave. Like that's unbelievable. I think that like and like if you've ever tried to microwave fish or something like that, like there is nothing more putrid than microwaved seafood. So no, I would not try it. Egg asks, what are some of the biggest moments in your life where you've changed your mind or perspective about something? That's a cool question. I'm going to be honest here because I think it's important to like tell this story and like to be open about this sort of thing. In high school, which was, oh my God, was 13 years ago? 12 years ago? Holy cow. Well, I guess like I graduated in 2014, so 11 years ago and back. When I was in high school, I was hyper political. I was hyper like angry political, and I had what I thought was like this novel political ideology of being like, oh, well, I'm very fiscally conservative and socially liberal, you know, which is like so cliche. And I thought I was the first person who ever thought that. And like then also in retrospect, to be fiscally conservative when you're 15 years old is so dumb and is so like self-indulgent and like hot, like it makes me sick. And then when I went to college, I kind of shifted pretty wildly and went very radically like isolationist, like libertarian. And I was like the moderator of this Facebook group called like the Young Pragmatists, and it was like this enlightened centrist, whatever. And then I had a phase of being very like angry radical leftist on Facebook, like like the person who's at in your hometown who's like everything they post is very obviously targeted at like their like Republican uncle, and that was me for a while. And then I've kind of settled into where I am now, which is I don't even know what you would call it, like as I don't know how to describe what like my political ideology is now, because it's kind of necessarily apolitical, but I don't know. I mean, I definitely vote one way. But yeah, the kind of evolution of my political ideology over the years, as I've learned more things, has shifted one way. And there are a lot of like angry dads in the world that are like, you go to college and all those professors brainwash you and they turn the frogs gay. Like, is it or like there is a strangely correlated shift between getting educated and moving to that side of the political spectrum? Just saying, I don't know. Anyway, Egg then asks, I'm looking for camera recommendations, something compact digital. Do you have anything you can recommend? Absolutely. And what do you use? So I am using now, you might have noticed that my last few videos have looked a lot higher quality. And that's one, because like I've started lighting them better. I've started like being concerned more with like lighting. And I got some like these old stage lights I used to use for performing that I now use to like light me when I'm doing stuff. But the main reason they look better is because I got a new camera. I got a Canon R100 mirrorless R100, and it's the coolest camera I've ever used. I've always been like kind of not a photographer by any means, but like just interested in cameras and cinematography and stuff. And so I've like played with a lot of cameras over the years and like tried to do like DIY video stuff. And this camera is by far the easiest to make look really nice, and like it's a great little camera. Before that I was using this camera, which I got at Walmart for $150, which is a Kodak Pix-Pro AZ405, and everything from like the Angry Birds video until my last 3 videos were filmed with this, or my last 2 videos were filmed with this, and I think those looked pretty good. For some reason this wouldn't work when I was trying to do green screen stuff. I couldn't make it look good, so I would actually film those with my iPhone for a minute, the iPhone that I still have, and that worked better. So like that camera definitely has more limitations, but yeah. And then before that I was using the like camcorder that I mentioned, which was just like a Chinese Amazon camcorder. And like I think that like in making video stuff, especially for YouTube, bad video is way more forgivable than bad audio. And so like being a musician, being like a music person, I think that like people were always able to kind of look past the shitty video because like the audio sounded good. I think that's way more important. That's not really your question though, but yeah, the Canon R100 I think is a great like mid-budget, like mid-level budget camera. I think it's like $600. And I bought it with I've saved up a bunch of YouTube money. So you guys bought me this camera basically, which is really cool. Thank you, Egg. Lady asked, how do you love your channel and this chance to ask some silly questions? Thank you. What word do you think you say the most besides things like the or and? What a fun question. I use the word deliberately, demonstrably, intrinsically, and inherently. I use the phrase in a vacuum a lot. I use the word comprehensive a lot. If I'm answering this question literally, I mean, I think the answer is like prepositions and like pronouns. So if I was being literal, I think it would probably be like in or of or whatever, but I think it's more fun to answer it with to interpret it as like, what words do you think you use an inordinate amount? And there would be those words I listed at the beginning. I think for some reason I use a lot. Lady asks, if you had to choose between smelling colors or tasting colors, which would you choose? How would your life change after that? It would be smelling for me. And the reason why is because like if we're assuming that we're separating taste and smell, which in reality are like very interlinked. Like if we're saying it is like one doesn't affect the other, then smell for me, because tasting colors would change the way that all food tastes. Whereas I think it would be like kind of fun to like smell. It would be just like a fun little thing if I was like, oh, purple smells like, oh, red smells. You know what I mean? Like that would be a fun, just like kind of little thing I would get to experience, whereas like tasting colors would change everything. And then like, you know, what if mac and cheese isn't good anymore because yellow tastes gross? You know what I mean? Marina asks, what would you say the most difficult of your projects to start was and why? So if we mean, like, I'm just going to take this to mean like projects in general, like anything that I've ever worked on. Starting the project of, I guess, like doing this room. If you haven't watched, it's not one of my most viewed videos, but the video turning how to turn your shed into a studio or whatever. I took a literal empty shed on my property and turned it into like my little game room, little, you know, collector nerd space in my studio, music and now videos. And that project was super intimidating because I didn't know how to do any of the stuff that I was doing. Like, you know, wiring outlets and like putting drywall in the ceiling and insulating the room and like those sorts of things. So that was very intimidating. It was hard to start because it was something that I really wanted and something that I wanted to be good and didn't know how. So I had to figure it out as I went. And you should watch that video. I think it's one of my best videos, and it's like one of my least viewed videos. You should watch it. Number 2, my favorite Pokemon and type. Thank you for asking this question. Oh, I did already kind of answer this though. Mew is my favorite Pokemon. I think that the like ethos of Mew, like one of the only Pokemon that has like this really deep backstory, like Mewtwo, Pikachu, Charmander, Mew have like these Cubone have these like fully fleshed out backstories. Mew represents like whimsy and joy and childlike wonder and kindness in a way that I think is really beautiful and important. And in addition to being like so cool and cute and like limitlessly powerful despite like being cute and small, which is one of my favorite like tropes in Pokemon. And yeah, so it's Mew. And my favorite type is probably Psychic type, which is also kind of stereotypical and lame. So I picked a legendary Pokemon and the most like OP kind of played out type, but that's, you know, I'm not gonna lie. All right, number 3, thoughts on standardized testing and Bush education initiatives as a teacher. Can't imagine they're positive, but I'd like to know. I think standardized testing, my thoughts on standardized testing are conflicted because I think that there is value in standardized testing, in having like a measure to compare, to make comparisons. I think that like in a vacuum, that would be a valuable thing. But the way that it's used, I think, is self-defeating and very frustrating and a pretty big net negative. That like using standardized test scores to dictate where funding goes and where resources are allocated on like a state level, I think is ridiculous, because even if we were going to do that, which I think is a bad premise in itself, it should be the inverse of the way that things go. The schools who score the lowest on standardized testing should be given the most resources, the most discretionary funds, and the most like, you know, like should be helped, instead of like being like, oh, well, this school is a failing school, so we're going to give our money to this A school. So I think that that's ridiculous. I also think kids are over-tested. I don't think there's any real value in a third grade SAT equivalent. You know what I mean? Like, I think that that's kind of stupid. But there is value in diagnostic testing. There is value in standardized testing if it's used as a formative assessment instead of like a end of the year thing and we just look to see how we did sort of thing. If we're using it to guide instruction, then I think that it has value, but I don't think it's really used that way. Next question. What gets you to say that a video is finished? That's an interesting one. At what point do you say that you're done and can put that project down? I am like a serial completionist, which has actually been like a major problem of mine, because like I won't like get up from whatever I'm doing until I'm done with it. And then like the quality has kind of suffered on stuff throughout my life, especially music, where I get too excited about the idea of a new song that I'll work on it and I'll build it up and I'll just obsess over it for like 8 hours. And then I'll want it to be done by the time I get up. And so like I'll leave out some like detail and like little ear candy transitional elements or like things like that, because like I'm being lazy ultimately. So I've actually worked really hard to like undo that, because now as an adult, you know, like with a child and a girlfriend and a relation, like a real job and shit and responsibilities, I don't have the time to sit until something is done. So I've had to kind of relearn how to work in spurts. Which I talked about in the video that it's out by the time this one comes out. As for how it's done, I think it's honestly throughout my life has been more a result of fatigue, that like when I just run out of steam, the thing is done and I move on to the next thing. And that's kind of what energizes me, is moving on to the next thing and getting excited about something new. And that's kind of been a negative thing. I don't know how I decide that things are done now. A video is done because the script is... I've already written them, except for these videos. So when I get to the end of the script, it's over. But as for how the script is finished, I don't really know. I guess like just kind of vaguely when I run out of stuff to say. Thank you. Who was that? Marina, for your question. I want to do the rest of these questions, but I'm so long-winded that I'm going to try to be a little bit quicker. Henri, or Metamorphosis on YouTube, very cool, interesting YouTuber, asks, as a fellow world builder or writer, about the book, cool. What inspired you to create your world in the novel? For the story, was there a feeling or message you wanted to tell or an idea you wanted to explore? So the motivation for my book that I'm writing, a chapter of which you'll hear at the end of this video, was motivated largely in that I love high fantasy. I love, goblins and orcs and elves and wizards and warriors and that kind of stuff. And other than like Lord of the Rings, there's not very much like big, popular, high fantasy stuff that is for kids. I mean, that is for adults, other than like Game of Thrones is like the like modern example. And high fantasy tends to be targeted at children. Dragons and stuff is like a kid's thing. And so I wanted to write something that is very indulgently, very grandiosely high fantasy, very like truly high fantasy stuff, but that is targeted at an older demographic that like kids could still pick up and enjoy, like Lord of the Rings, but is not dumbed down in that way. And so that was kind of the motivation for it, and hopefully that comes across. Henri also asks, how do you go about coming up with stuff for the story? How do you move forward for the story if you feel stuck? I have been stuck for a very long time, about 3/4 of the way done with the book, and that is actually one of the reasons why I started doing these videos, was like creating an accountability, like trying to read it to people in hopes that they will say, oh, I really like that, I want to read the rest of it, and then that will motivate me to finish the rest of it, and it's been working. So I don't know if that would be something that you could, a tactic that you could use, but that's what's kind of worked for me. One Winged Angel asks, how toasted do you like your toast? 1 to 10, 10 being burnt and 1 being raw. I like my toast at like an 8, probably. Like almost like a deep brown, where like if I flop it like that, it doesn't move. It's like stuck. It's flat. I don't like when my toast gets wet when I put stuff on it. I like the crunch of the toast, but I will not eat burnt toast. JD Gaming Master 5 asks, have you heard that the bird is the word? Yeah, I have. Bird is the God, right at the end of this, not your Diana. I want to come back to this question later. I might just do a video at some point, just a very self-indulgent video about my favorite music. What's your favorite music, artists, bands, genres? Do you collect any physical music? I collect records to a degree. I collect like CDs a little bit, and then I like my iPod, like my iTunes library is like my main collecting thing. I'm gonna say Fall Out Boy, Owl City for like old music, and then now I listen to a lot of like Quadeca, Kamo, Breakins. Those are some artists that I really like right now. In addition to like the 1975 Vampire Weekend, and then I'll do a more fully fleshed out thing about music later. Don Blue Pito asks, opinion on Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, and Rings of Power. I haven't watched Rings of Power, but Lord of the Rings is my favorite thing ever. So I'm kind of scared to watch Rings of Power. Chapter 6, Minerva. There arises a strange feeling in one's being underground. It's not something that I had experienced often, being below the surface. In the hall, as we walked toward the door, I felt curiously at ease. I was on my way to a mysterious secret community, at least this was what I assumed Tyria to be, as Order had given me few details, with a mythical creature thought by most to no longer exist, and I knew that a long, perilous, improbable task was forming before me, but in the halls of the great below, I couldn't help but feel safe and secure. I didn't know if the lack of breeze, windows, and entry points incited this feeling, but it was as if time had stopped, or as if the urgency and chaos of the outside world was temporarily subdued while we were underneath it. I liked it. We approached the door at the end of the hallway after half hour's walk, and we stopped. The door was massive, reaching from floor to ceiling, which was easily 20 feet above us. It was ornate, and to my taste, tacky. The work of someone who had either had extreme expertise in the field of woodwork, or the proud purchase of someone with the money to hire someone of such ilk. There were large wooden sculptures on each side of the door of highly detailed decorative cats, perfectly uniform despite their being obviously handcrafted. And then a profound realization came upon me that I had experienced this exact moment before in the room with the orc and with order. They were not cats protruding from the sides of the door, and they were not cats on the trim of the door in Tirdavingi. They were Zhurtooth. These, I said, pointing to one of the sculptures, look exactly like the sculptures in the orcs' room in Tirdavingi. How did they get there? Why would sculptures of Zhurtooth be on the trim of an entryway of an orc's holding cell? They wouldn't, Order replied in typical riddle. The orc's holding cell, of which you speak, is also the heavily guarded home to a highly valuable artifact from the corridors of the Great Hall in the Apharian city of No Name. The entryways of all rooms within the Great Hall were adorned with enchanted wood sculptures made from the last trees of elm, given to the city by my own ancestors, the Zhurtooth. The sculptures present to anyone who views them a clue into one's own destiny. They were adorned by the Apharian peoples, and many would travel for miles just to walk through the corridors of the Great Hall and see glimpses into their futures. The last remaining pieces after the destructive raids on the city of No Name by Thronmir and his army were preserved by survivors, fought over for centuries, and as of now, only 2 remain, currently held in neutral supervision by hired orcs, and there is a dispute among the 2 rich families in Empire regarding to whom they belong. The truth is, of course, that they belong to Apharian. I'm pleased to know that you believe... I am pleased to know that to you they presented as sculptures of the Zhurtooth. I wondered what you would see. Wait, I said. Is this the same thing? I reached into my bag and presented Order with the necklace I found in the study that day. This looks like the same material, and it's obviously broken, but it does seem to be a Zhurtooth as well. Order beheld the necklace. Remarkable. I knew not of anything else ever being made with the wood. Yes, Marina, it is exactly as you theorized. I'm in awe. I wonder why it was made, who made it, and where the other piece is. Well, any lingering shreds of doubt in my mind had already been extinguished, but a couple of magic sculptures is a welcome confirmation. What do you see in it, Order? I asked. He hesitated, as if slightly pained by the acknowledgement. The Zephyra, he said. I can only hope it belongs to you, and not Thronmir when the time comes. The Zephyra were all killed off the dragon centuries ago, Order. I don't think we'll be riding into Durfrak on the back of a Zephyra, and neither will Thronmir defend himself on the back of one, I said. The last Cadmasaur, too, was said to have died centuries ago, as well as the last Zhurtooth, Marin. Yet here we both stand. The elm sculptures do not lie, nor do they misspeak. And with that, Order stepped into a small stone near the foot of the door, which fell slightly inward, and released a rope from a compartment that sprung open on the wall. He pulled it backward with his teeth, and a slit in the door opened. Order opened his mouth, and for the first time I heard him audibly vocalize. It was not speech, but it was sort of an organized pattern of chirp-like sounds that resembled the sound of a bird and a fox at once. The slit in the door promptly popped shut, and Order said nothing. We waited a moment, and then the slit in the door opened again. The sounds that Order made were returned to us in a deeper register than Order's. Order replied with some similar pattern of noises, and the slit popped close again. What is going on exactly? I asked. But before Order could answer, and I'm unsure that he would have anyway, the door began to open. After a long few seconds, the door opened fully to reveal a bustling, dark network of connected cobblestone alleyways. Lighted by lamps and torches that created a constant but dim light, the area seemed endless, extending far beyond a point at which I could still see. And all throughout, men and elves and dwarves, even creatures the likes of which I've never seen, walked to and fro, conversing, carrying supplies, buying and selling goods from small merchant stands, and drinking at strange little outdoor taverns. It was like the biggest city I'd ever seen with my own eyes, except underground, in a perpetual state of half-night, lighted by only the network of lamps and torches. In front of us stood a little man, small enough to have been a dwarf. I surely would have thought him so if it had not been for his proportional body and lack of a dwarf's sturdy, broad shoulders. He was eyeing Order and myself cautiously, as if the presumable secret code Order performed in the door's window was enough to give him cause to open the door, but not enough to gain his trust. Finally, he spoke.
Sir?
He said, in a grisly low register surprising from such a small man.
What business have you in the great below?
I realized in that moment that, of course, Order could not speak with the man himself. At first, I wondered why Order himself didn't explain our business here. Luckily, he and I could speak to each other via Thesmerda, and Order could coach me along. What do I tell him? I asked Order. Tell him we wish to speak with Minerva. She's respected here. He will know who that is. I turned to the little man and attempted to sound official. I wish to speak with Minerva, I said.
Minerva?
Said the little man. He was visibly taken aback by the name, suspicious of me instantly.
How do you know Minerva?
I was worried by his accusatory tone in his questioning. I again consulted silently with Order. What do I do? I asked. Say that it's official business and that he's welcome to accompany us for verification if he wishes to explain to Eris why he's left his post. Order responded with noticeable aggravation. Are you sure? I wish not to make an enemy of the man. He's just doing his job, I would think. And who is Eris? I said to Order. Do as you wish, Marin. I understand your apprehension, but this guard is the least of our concerns. If he knew who we were, he would have let us pass immediately, he said. I looked at the man, and then again at Order, and then back at the man. It's official business, and I haven't the time to explain the nature of our arrangement, I said. You may come along if you need verification that Minerva is expecting me, but I don't think Eris would be happy if you left your post. Order smiled, happy that I'd taken his advice. The guard nearly jumped when I said the name Eris.
Oh, why, yes, I suppose you're right. You may go ahead. I apologize. I only wish to keep Tyria from unwelcome visitors. It is my duty, as Eris instructed. Who are you, sir, if I may ask, to know Eris? Order jumped into my mind before I can respond. You do not have to lie here in Tyria. It is safe, despite the guard's incompetence. I am Marin of Althrin, I said, and for the first time I felt proud of the name. Self-indulgently, I allowed myself a long pause before adding, the next Cadmasar. The little guard almost fainted. When he came to his senses, he bowed and then stood tall and soldier-like in respect, which made me feel strangely embarrassed. Oh, my absolute sincerest apologies, sir. Please forgive my questioning. I didn't know. I am so sorry, sir. Please forgive me. If there is anything I can do to aid you, sir, please say the word.
Well, thank you, friend. To speak with Minerva is all I need at the moment, though I appreciate your offer. Remain at the gate. Your work is important, I said, immediately feeling fraudulent and silly to speak how I imagined a king would, but I panicked and knew not what else to say in the moment. He allowed us forward, and we walked toward the sprawling chaos that was Tyria. Order walked leisurely at my side, and Bomb remained snugly in my satchel. You handled that well, Marin, Order said. In Tyria, all are allies, and most are trustworthy. The guard is one of mine, though he knows it not. Eris never shows his face to the people of Tyria. Why not? Eris seems to be in charge here, no? The guard seemed terrified that I even knew the name, I said. He does not show himself because he cannot, Order replied. Why not? I asked. Well, because to them, he looks like a cat, or a fox, or something of the sort. Order smiled, and I picked up on his implication. His influence is vast, his deeds are well known, and he is respected, but they cannot speak with him directly. He keeps Tyria functioning via his friends who speak for him, the foremost of which being Minerva, the very same. How could you possibly have built all this? I asked. He laughed. I built nothing here. Tyria is a nearly ancient space, a bunker of sorts, originally built during a tumultuous time before the Age of Elm. My ancestors commissioned its construction to safeguard the many books and important documents of the Jertooth when it seemed the world as it was may have been in danger of collapse. Throughout the many following years, Tyria expanded, always in secrecy. Now it's become a haven for those opposing the Empire but unwilling or unable to rebel. A sort of third option, if you will. Those allowed entrance are those whose desire for peace, and peace alone, is corroborated by those already here. And to be granted permanent refuge requires a series of tests, all administered by Minerva and her assembly. It's not perfect, as Tyria must be actively and carefully ruled, a concept for which you know I have disdain, but it is peaceful, and that is better than nothing. You've truly done a bit of everything in your life, it seems, I said. Yet there is much to be accomplished, he replied. Order guided me through the sea of slender roads. We stopped to purchase some food, and I also acquired some berries and grain for Bomb, as I realized he had not eaten since our leaving the marshland. I dumped the food into the satchel, and Bomb squeaked with excitement before eating most of it in a few seconds and falling into a deep, contented slumber. After a few hours, Order and I reached the opposite edge of the underground city. Against it was a humble but sturdy square building of white stone that seemed small to be the capital building of such a heavily populated community, but Order assured me that this was indeed the place. He informed me that it was bigger than it seemed. We approached the door, another tall, intimidating door like the one at the entrance to Tyria, and again Order stepped on a stone that revealed a secret compartment. This time, inside was not a string, but a lever, and Order wrapped his tail around it, pulling, which caused a bell to chime inside the building. And again, a guard opened the door slowly. This time, however, the guard was not suspicious of us at all. It seemed that he recognized Order, and he said nothing but ushered us inside. We were escorted into a massive room with high ceilings and intricate chandeliers that hung from above. I realized what Order meant when he told me that the building was bigger than it seemed. The entire place was within the wall, an excavated cave that hid behind the unassuming building out front. The guard silently gestured for us to sit down, and upon a bench that sat alone in the massive room we sat. He walked off, and we were left alone. Why does the guard not speak? I asked. He cannot. I theorize that's why Minerva prefers him to the others, and has placed him in her personal guard. She enjoys much her solitude and quiet. At once we heard a clacking in the distance, and it became clear that someone was walking our way. The shoes hit the floor with a precision, almost like a hammer hitting a nail. And it was somehow obvious that the somebody to whom they belonged was somebody quite large, whom simultaneously walked with an air of authority and direction. After what seemed like an eternity, that somebody entered the large room in which Order and I sat at the bench. She was immensely tall, probably 7 or so feet in stature, with paper white skin and pointed ears, behind which was tucked neatly a cascading gray ponytail. She wore an olive green robe which had ornate gold patterning that danced about her shoulders, and underneath the robe seemed to be tightly woven mail armor. She was intimidating, powerful, but beautiful. She spoke in a near whisper, showing her age with its hoarseness. "Sua," she said, with wonder. "Sua?" I asked. She looked startled, almost as if she hadn't realized I was there. "My apologies, friend. For a friend you are, if you know my dear Sua. It is only that I had not known Sua yet to be yet alive. I do wish that there were much a reunion celebration to be had, but naturally, given that you accompany him, a celebration now would be premature. It is a pleasure to meet you, Cadmassar. I never thought I would have the honor." She bowed, which made me feel extremely out of place and awkward. "Oh, you don't have to... It's a pleasure to meet you as well. Minerva, is that right?" I stammered. "It is. And while I know who you are, I know not your name, Cadmassar." Marin of Althrin. And Marin I much prefer. Cadmassar feels so official." "Official it is. If Sua's right, and I know he always is, the title is something to which you must become acclimated. In time, all of Alpharaon will refer to you as such if all is accomplished," she responded with a soft and parental tone that both comforted and terrified me. She paused and then kindly added, "But I will call you by your name, friend. Marin, I hope you'll tell me all about yourself. Firstly, however," she turned to Order, closing her mouth and speaking in the manner with which I had come to know... Oh, shoot, hold on. She said, turning to Order, closing her mouth and speaking in the manner which I had come to know only the chosen few can. Thesmerda. She concluded, "I must hear your tale." "You have gifts," I said, silently following suit. She has but Thesmerda," chimed Order, who'd been waiting patiently during our introduction, "and it was not a gift at all. She is to this day the only living being not of Jatuth ancestry nor of Cadmassar birth to ever master the ability through magic and practice alone." He turned to Minerva. "It's nice to see you again, friend." Minerva peered down from her massive height at the small creature. "I thought I would never see you again. When last you left Tyria, I, like the rest of us, had my doubts. They've all since perished in rebel skirmishes or passed of age. I held out hope. To say I am glad to bear witness to your return is an understatement if there has ever been one." She then turned to me again. "Marin, I'm sure you have many questions. There's much to be done as well, and fast. Let us eat, and we shall address the former of these tasks." She arose. "Come along to the dining hall. I arranged for a meal to be prepared after I was informed of your arrival." The three of us stood and followed Minerva to the hallway through which she'd entered the great room. As it had been for some time, my growing list of questions bounced around in my mind. Do I really have more gifts? If so, how could Minerva help me sharpen them if she herself didn't have them? Who was the rest of us to which she referred? These, among countless others, plagued me, but the foremost of these questions was one that Order himself had yet to answer. If the original 5 Cadmassar were given their gifts by he of before, and they were all killed by Thranmere hundreds of years ago, how would there ever be another Cadmassar at all? How could I have been given my gifts in the first place? Is it random? There had to be something that Order was not telling me. We arrived in the dining hall and sat before a long, oval-shaped table made of the same strange marble-like material from the back staircase in Tyria's hidden entrance. The dining hall, not unlike the room into which we entered originally, was rather empty. There were no flashy symbols of wealth adorning the walls or suits of armor on display, just a grand room with a giant table, large windows letting in the strange kind of light from Tyria's many torch-lit walkways, and some shelving featuring a few strange potted plants which were apparently able to survive without sunlight. Minerva sat at the end of the table and motioned for Order to hop into the nearest chair and for me to sit opposite him. I placed my bag on the floor, checked to confirm that Baum was still sleeping soundly, he was, of course, and sat, waiting. Finally, Minerva broke the silence, although I suppose that to anyone but us, the room would remain observably silent the whole time as we spoke via Thesmerda. Order left here some 10 or so years ago, Marin, to set into motion a plan that he and I had devised for many years prior. We heard the possibility of a new Cadmassar's birth. How is that possible? I interrupted, and then backpedaled. I'm so sorry to interrupt. It's just that very question has been plaguing me for some time now. It isn't a problem, dear. I understand your confusion. How do you mean, though? How is what possible? She replied gracefully. I struggled to put into words what I meant. I mean, well, how could a new Cadmasar be born at all? Weren't the original 5 meant to live for hundreds of years before their murder? Weren't the other 4 all killed at once? Weren't there gifts given to them by he of before? How could someone just be born and be Cadmasar? Minerva looked taken aback. She glanced at Order. You haven't told him, she said. I withheld information in anticipation of our reunion, friend, he responded. I knew it would be hard to believe, and I wanted to ensure corroboration when I told him. I don't think he would believe me otherwise. He's incredulous, which is a valuable inclination. He smiled in my direction. My worry faded a bit, replaced with the nervous excitement for what I would learn. And then Order spoke with a solemn tone. There's more to your story than I'd let on. You're right to surmise that a Cadmasar cannot just be born. In fact, you were not born Cadmasar. You were given your gifts, and the long-debated legend of this possibility was confirmed when I first met you in Tiravenji, and you heard me. It has to do with your parents, Marin. You see, your mother in particular was far more than she let on, and thankfully so, for her guile and hiding is precisely the reason we now have the opportunity to take back Apharaon from Thronmere. The mention of my mother struck me like an arrow. I realized in that moment that I truly did know almost nothing of my mother or my parents at all. How so? I replied shakily. For hundreds of years there had been rumors that became legend. The claim was that when he of before granted the original 5 Cadmasar their gifts, he wisely devised a safeguard, a potential glimmer of hope in the event that something were to have gone wrong. According to the original witnesses of the transfer of gifts, there was a 6th, Order explained. That's impossible. The story of the cat... that sounds so silly. It sounds like an anime. But how? That's impossible. The story of the Cadmasars is well known as any. Everyone knows there were 5. You told me yourself that there were 5, I said. Order looked at Minerva. Incredulous, I told you, he said. He looked back at me. You are correct. There were 5 known Cadmasar, and they were the 5 about which you and I spoke. The 6th was, again, but a legend, one I myself did not fully believe until I confirmed my suspicions about you. No one had ever been able to confirm the 6th's existence, and only 3 living beings professed to know that the story was true. One of the 3 kept quiet about what specifically he believed, but I'll save him for last. Of the other 2, the first was a heretical elderly man, the leader of a small sort of cult in the city of no name. He was called Thralic, and he and his few followers were essentially the first rebels, or dissenters at least, for they never attempted a true rebellion, but were the only to profess any dissatisfaction in the early days of the Age of Elm. They didn't believe in the benevolence of the original 5 Cadmasar, nor in the cause of Apharaon, and Thralic claimed to have possessed personally the transferal of the gifts, and swore until his dying day that there was a 6th who was sent off immediately on a different task. Few believed him, of course, other than his followers, but he was an evangelical and told the story to all who would listen. Another was Froy, a disgraced representative of one of the minor Goplaisha in early Apharaon, a small and insignificant community from the furthest eastern border by the name of Thiralam. Order stopped because he knew I would interrupt at the mention of Thiralam. The same Thiralam? I asked. Yes, the one that later became Althrin, Order replied. Froy was Thiralam's first leader, and he is the reason your hometown was reorganized some 400 years ago. You see, Froy's an important figure in the understanding of the fall of Apharaon, yet he is one whose story has been largely forgotten, or, more precisely, carefully withheld from the Empire's historical accounts. Froy, like Thralic, also claimed to have accidentally witnessed the transferal of the gifts. He claimed that he was in what would later become the city of no name by sheer coincidence, that Thiralam had been experiencing hardship, and he was traveling westward with a small caravan of merchants in hope of selling Thiralam's main export, the Althrin seed, used for a fermented beverage that predated the introduction to Thiralam's nearby towns and cities of the less complicated alcoholic beverages like the now ubiquitous mead of barley, to areas that had yet to be introduced. According to Froy, he happened across 6 young men and a peculiar fox-like creature sitting in a circular pattern after he found himself lost on the rarely traveled paths from Thiralam to the bigger western communities. Startled, he sat back and watched as a strange ritual dance of sorts took place, and then the 6 men sat silently, watching the fox attentively for some half an hour. The ritual again took place, the fox seemed to vanish into thin air, and then the 5 men went off in one direction and the 6th went another. Froy was terrified and quickly went on his way. Years later, after the city of no name was built, and the cause of Apharaon, as well as the news of the 5 powerful strange men called Cadmasar had reached Thiralam,
Froy was shaken, as he immediately connected their descriptions to what he had witnessed years before on the road westward from his home. He traveled to the city of No Name to confirm his beliefs and condemn the original five for some brand of evil sorcery. But upon seeing the grandeur and wonder of the city, and meeting the Cadmus for himself, being granted a seat on the minor council, which legitimized and supported the struggling Thirlem, he kept what he had witnessed that day to himself for many years, and subscribed to the cause of Apharaon. Order concluded. Well, why, then, is he a villainous figure? I asked. Why was Thirlem reorganized? At this, Order seemed to be almost overcome with a great sadness. He nodded at Minerva, who then continued the story. Thronmir, she said, the final believer in the six Cadmusar. What happened? I asked. Well, when Natursme began his descent into madness after his self-exile, he commenced a search for anyone who might have witnessed the transfer of the gifts, because he knew something no one else did. The reason for the sixth.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching my stupid little channel and for supporting me and for making all my dreams come true. And if you have any ideas for something that I could do as I try to like build this kind of side thing, this Shameless Nerd Show thing, out into like a podcast, I guess, ideas for what I could do, that would be cool. Because like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I want to do something that is for the real fans, you know what I'm saying? Like the OGs. So it's for y'all. Like it's something additional to like the other stuff. People that aren't like watching my videos based on topic, but are that like I'm watching my videos because I like him, which is like just like the coolest thing in the world. And so like whatever I can do to shape this to be more interesting or engaging to you guys, please let me know. And thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.